with all beings as stewards of the earth. And I, for one, am very excited to hold this container open for Uncle Robert to share his wisdom with all of us. And I am excited to see what he has to say.
Okay.
All right. Looks like you're all set up over there.
Mm-hmm.
Uncle
Okay,
Robert, I pass the talking torch to you.
Wanna Çante news up, choose up below. Çante Ohitika Dakota Spiritual Elder. Just extended my heart, my hand from my heart to all here tonight to share this message of unity and love for one another. I'd just like to start by saying, I use these feathers as a symbol of truth. My elders always told me when you use these sacred items, you speak the truth. So these things that I tried to share around that sacred fire at Sacred Stone and other places wherever I'm blessed to speak, I do my best to speak the truth and tell people from my heart the realities of what we're experiencing today. And I think about all the things that are going on in the world today, and you hear all these stories, about how this pandemic is a conspiracy or man-created or however it came into effect. And then you think of global warming and then racism. So I would like to say that these things that are prevalent today were prophesied many times long ago and passed down throughout all the tribes. Every tribe, I'm sure, of all the nations throughout North and South America have stories about what would happen in these times that we're facing today. And through a lot of soul searching and prayer and fasting and ceremonies, you come to the understanding that the earth is crying out to humanity. And people, they take these things for granted, that this earth we call Unchi Maka, Grandmother Earth, is a living entity. And all these plants and animals and everything that is a part of what we call natural law. And the natural law of things is, it's like you take one element out of the picture and the balance there's no balance. And that goes along.
Uncle Robert, I think the sound might have dropped out. There you go.
Okay.
That's interesting.
The phone muted again, technical difficulties. I was speaking about the balance that there is in the world under natural law, and that man has upset this balance by his destructive nature, his ability to, we've come into a lifestyle now where we have advanced so far technologically and supposedly intellectually, and yet one side that has been left out and we've gotten away from, it's because of the way man views life, that he is the master and that everything else is for our benefit to take and use. And that comes from greed. Our hearts, I told this story around Sacred Stone Campfire many times, and I called it the Gold Rock Syndrome. And for those who, and I use analogies like I'm sure a lot of people, they have their own personal beliefs, We were indoctrinated Christians, proselyted and assimilated into that belief system. And I don't, from a traditional perspective, we're not supposed to run down anybody's belief system or how they choose to understand this divine power that we call Wakantaka, that divine mystery beyond all understanding, beyond measure, that even our science or our own selves, we search for purpose. And it's usually, and so in that light, I have been raised a Catholic, and I am a product of the 60s. I was born in the 50s and grew up through the 60s, and I watched the change come. Before that, like I said before, in my childhood, there was still an immense amount of racism, and it wasn't until I had got into high school that I start understanding that a change was coming. But at the same time, being, I'm a product of mixed blood. I'm Dakota mostly, but I have, my great grandfather was a German settler, and on my father's side, his mother had black blood. So I joke and I put NJB behind my last name, Native, Jewish, and Black. But at one time you couldn't do that, so you had to just choose who you were, and the other side had to remain hidden because of the racism prevalent. And it's so amongst our people and all other peoples, So again, there's a balance through natural law that we have to live by. And in this modern world now, and the change, I call myself a product of the 60s and a bridge child, because that's what enabled me around that campfire at Sacred Stone to believe, to understand and try to throw this understanding out there so that the world would understand where us as Native people were coming from. Because people look at us in you ask them about what do they know about history of the Native Americans in America, and not a lot of people know the true story, the genocide, the loss of our culture, the loss of our ways, and the confusion it created. And then the balance was upset there. And then culturally, then we lost identity. Alcoholism, drug abuse, neglect, and abuse of one another. And then we became racist ourselves. We hated the rest of the world real strongly because of what happened to us. And then as time progressed through the 60s and the age of awareness, that's what I call it, it woke people up. It gave us a sense of pride when we stood up for our rights and tried to share a message that we were a people and we weren't going away. And now we're living in a time where so much is going on, so fast, so quick. I heard my brother Oren Lyons speak about that in the 50s, scientists said there were 4 billion people in the world. Since the advent of man, from way back when, caveman days up to that present point. But just since the 50s, it has more than tripled. And now we have become a gold worshiping, monetary, consumeristic society that have become like a disease to the earth. And we just completely, it's just like the pipeline fight that we defended the water against. Corporate entities and man's greed is destroying the planet, destroying the water of life, and destroying ourselves in the process. And then there's nihilism and atheism and lack of belief in any good solid system or cultural belief, because people have lost their cultural identity. And my brother friend Orville has traveled around the world trying to share this message that it's time to wake up. It's time to wake up, that we need to understand one another and go back to our understanding of who we are, where we come from, and where we're going to take this now. And then we have these prophecies that come into play. The rainbow prophecy of one of our profound chiefs, Crazy Horse, Black Elk. Black Elk was a catechist and a pipe carrier. And he spoke of the sacred hoop mending. And that was where all colors would come together eventually and have to work together and come to this understanding of sharing our ways out of the common love and respect that was commanded us through our sacred Chinoopa. Our relatives on the East Coast had the Tecumseh and the sacred tree of peace. And they decided what was needed to form a better lifestyle for humanity. And then amongst the Lakota, then a woman brought the pipe to us. And that's a part of the divine feminine that people talk about. It was a woman who brought that. And it is the female source that gives all life. And that's a balance. You know, all female animals, all female creatures, birds, whatever, they create life. And because of this imbalance in our minds, in our hearts, in our technology, and the way of the world, global warming, these pandemics, all of these signs are signs that we have upset that natural law and order of things. And to the point where we're endangering ourselves. I hear people say, well, man is destroying the earth. As a native indigenous person, we understand that this earth is bigger than all of us. It was here for thousands of years, millions of years. And if we don't stop and take a look at what we're doing in this process of modernization and technology, those things are good to a certain degree when used in the right way. But the bottom line is this: we overconsume, and like my companion always says, you know, what are we going to do when the trucks stop coming? You know, we're so dependent on this consumerism and this system of money that we have forgotten, you know, the ability to love and respect one another, because people kill for money, people steal and lie to one another for money, you know. And then the other side of the balance is we disrespect our women, we disrespect the divine feminine. Our grandmothers amongst the native people taught love and respect. And they chose the clan mothers, the grandmothers, the matriarchs of the Lakota people. They chose the leaders. They chose the leaders because they understood the goodness in the hearts of good men. And it was their consensus that chose who would lead the people. And before these men even made a judgment call, they went to all these respected elderly women and asked them, well, what do you want for the people? And then they took it to the other tribes, and each one, they had councils. And all these councils, just like Benjamin Franklin observed amongst the East Coast nations, were the seeds of democracy. They laid the foundation of this country's political system. That these councils were an equitable council. They did things totally for the good of all, not one. And I always told people around that sacred fire, the only, you know, people are always looking for utopia. The perfect utopian society is a tribalistic society, which all societies lived by before they became materialistic and permanent dwellers, where we overharvest the areas where we build our homes permanently, and we overuse the land. And then again, there's the balance upset. There's the story about these trees in Alaska, these forests up in the edges in the mountains, and these beetles, they only come out a certain time, but because of global warming, some of them came out. One cycle of these beetles came out. They destroyed half of this forest, and then because of the global warming, they had those that had gone through their cycle, another group appeared and went through the cycle again and killed that whole forest. These beetles were there to keep down the ability to, it's just the order of natural selection, of how the natural law sorts things out so that there's just enough for everything to equally balance out. And we've unbalanced everything. And now it's even to the effect that we're totally out of balance in our minds, in our hearts, and in our soul. We take our women for granted. We beat them. We push them in the background and treat them like property. And we don't treat them like the matriarchs and the life givers. It's like that pipeline fight where my sister LaDonna spoke and prayed and set this fire down. They set a sacred fire down, and she laid a prayer out for the water. And that was a divine right that all natives give in our ceremonies to the woman, to pray with this water, because they give birth to children in water. Water breaks and children are born. So they're water bearers. They have that divine connection with the water of life. And that is a part of the balance we've upset now, so that we can have pipelines. We don't care about the water. And then now even to the point where it's being sold, which it was free, like air, air, the right to breathe and just live. All of these things were free from the Creator. Now we have price tags on those things, and we're pushing ourselves to the point of, we're pushed the earth, grandmother earth, to the point that we're like a disease on the earth. And if we don't balance this out, the earth will surely destroy us. And that's where these prophecies come into play. We told a prophecy at this pipeline fight of the 7th generation. And when I was there and the young people met, and they said, I went to some of their meetings. They wanted me there to be a mediator because of my elderness. The wise elder, tell us what to do. That's what they said. And I said, I'm only here to make sure that you can do these things in a respectful manner to one another. I value your judgment because this is part of the prophecy. It is your turn to step up and lead this, because the prophecy says this: unless this 7th generation makes the right moves and leads us the right direction, and leads us away from this greed and this prejudice and this hatred and all these things. And the signs are there because of Black Lives Matter. The children are stepping up now and saying, these unequitable things are not right, because these are the rainbow children genetically. All children in America are mixed children. People worry about this white power and supremacy movement. And I tell people, the reason they're raising their heads now is because that antiquated view of racism, it's in its death throes, because a lot of the youth no longer want to live that way. And it starts within ourselves, see, because I was trapped in that. I was trapped in that because in the days when I went to school and college, they taught the true history of America. And then I researched more and read what was said. Some of the presidents, Ulysses S. Grant said in a speech when he was running for president, unless these natives get in step with manifest destiny, we will have no choice but to exterminate them. And when I read that, my heart was inflamed with so much hatred. And then as time progressed, you know, and I had to find my way back to our traditional understanding, because I was raised, sent to boarding school where our language was taken from us. And by the time I got home, I couldn't even understand my elders anymore. And they speak in the language, and they kind of used it so they could talk openly, so us children wouldn't understand what's going on. But at the same time, when I tried to sort this out in my mind, well, why am I being shut out? You know, and then it was when I started seriously practicing our ways, trying to find my way back, these elder spirits came to me and told me this: you know, you must learn this way, and you must understand, because the world is changing. So then I became a product of the 60s. You know, people called me a hippie because I grew my hair long, and I wore beads and braided my hair and all of those sorts of things. You know, but I felt some pride and some understanding. And then I went back and started learning the ways. And fortunately for me, one of my uncles was a respected spiritual man who brought back Sitting Bull's pipe and held a Sundance. And I went there, and I was a young man in my 20s. This was in the late 70s when they passed the Native American Freedom Religion Act, and the country has totally changed since then. But again, now, see, with this president we have in office, and this racism has raised its head, but it's in its death throes, because I am assured by these prophecies that have come full circle, like the prophecy of Black Elk, who said the sacred hoop would mend when all colors dance around that tree. All colors are coming to the Native people. People are looking to the Native people. Though they tried to exterminate us, though they tried to lessen the degree of who we are and assimilate us to the point where we didn't even know who we were anymore. And that's where I said the balance was upset. And it's still prevalent today because of the alcohol and the drug abuse, but more and more so now. The youth that are more educated, that have taken advantage of the understanding of the world, are looking back to the ways and returning back to the truth. And that's the message that I want to share with everybody, that we are coming to a time now where we have to understand the precepts of natural law, which is an equitable law, which it means that all human beings, in our language, we say, mitaku ye oyasin, and the closest they can come to interpret it is we're all related. And by that, they mean that not just human beings, but we're related to the earth. We're related to the plants and the animals. You know, plants have life. People act like they're not alive. They are alive. Birds and insects, they all have life. And they all depend on this water of life, that these water bearers, like my wife and them, who pray in these ceremonies, pray for humanity. And then the amazing thing, that I was so thankful that I had this platform at Sacred Stones to speak and to sit in ceremony with many people from all over the place. And they would come out and say, I can't believe that you're praying for the whole world after all you have endured. After all, they tried to exterminate your people, yet you have this love for humanity still. I said, because that was what we were told to do. We are an inclusive people, not an exclusive people. And that goes back to the way we had lived before. A utopian society is a society that they don't try to repo your teepee. Can't repo your teepee. You can't turn off your fire because you can't pay for your fire. You can eat because you don't have to pay money, because everything out there was free. And there were no jails, and there was no class system. Everybody was equal. There was no division, because everybody knew. All the children were wholesome because they say it takes a tribe to raise children. Now children are latchkey children, isolated children, you know, and there lies the problem. It creates doubt, it creates confusion, and it creates mental instability, because I've heard many youth, I've heard many young men come to me and say, well, what is the purpose of life? And I don't feel loved by my own family. You know, it's because we isolate ourselves. We've isolated ourselves. Again, there's the upset of the balance. See, there has to be a balance in the natural order of things. And that comes from love and respect for one another. The precepts that were taught through the sacred pipe and all natives. And I can go from one tribe to another. And if they are traditional, truly, they will give me that equitable respect because of I am a child of the Creator. And we are all indigenous to the earth, so we are all related. That's where that whole midakiasi comes in. We're connected totally as a family. And I'm so thankful that I had come to this point in my life as an elder to see that these prophecies have come full circle, and that I see the hope in you and every youth and every person and elder who steps up and says that I will support these youth and lead them in truth and respect and love and honor. And I will teach them these precepts. You know, there are a lot of people out there who are so confused and they're looking for answers. And sometimes you have to look within first. You have to free yourself from your own garbage before you can find that balance. And once you free yourself from that contamination that the world has put in your heart and your mind, then it's better able to see that other human beings have the right to exist, just like the plants and the animals. That's the balance that we're talking about. And I hope and I pray that everybody who understands this message that we must love and respect one another. And with that, you know, I would like to give a little time to my wife to share some of the things about the 8 fires and how these prophecies have come into play today. You know, if you would like to speak, my dear.
Thank you, Uncle Robert.
So part of my heritage is Anishinaabe, and it was through Anishinaabe people that I also was brought back into the circle of these native ways, a place called Waswaganing in at the Lac du Flambeau Reservation in Wisconsin, Ojibwe Reservation, Ojibwa. And so I don't claim to have any full knowledge and understanding of the prophecy, but I've been given bits and pieces of that over the years. And the 8th fire prophecy of the Anishinaabe says that it follows the migration of the Anishinaabe people who were originally located here, where we're at now in Maine on the East Coast, part of the Wabanaki people. And about 1,500 years ago, they broke away from the Eastern Gate and made a great migration. And you can look that up online and read about it if you like, but the gist of it is that along the way, through a succession of fires or periods of time, for lack of a better way of explaining it, that along the way of that migration, some people would be lost, and some people would lose their ways and lose their language and their culture, and even their connection with Gitchimanitu, the creator. And that in the time of the 7th fire, the youth would begin to return and seek these ways, and that at that time it should be shared. And that's what we have done. And as the 8th fire has been lit, humankind has to choose which path we will take, whether we'll take the path of materialism and consumerism, which, you know, constitutes greed and a lack of love and respect for not only our fellow human beings, but all life, and you know, even the stones, the grandfathers. We'll need, if we're to survive, we need to turn away from that path and choose the way of the heart, and choose to show love and respect for, again, not only our fellow humans, but our Mother Earth, who, you know, from whom all life springs. And so, you know, we've committed grievous sins against her as a race, as a species, and those things need to be corrected if we're even to survive. So some of our Wabanaki elders here have said, for example, that there would come a time when, in order to survive, we would have to move north following the moose. And at this time, at this juncture in time, the moose are expected to be regionally extinct from at least Maine, if not all of Wabanaki territory, within the next 20 years. Part of it is diseases from insects. There's a big problem with ticks, literally making the new baby moose, the calves, anemic, and not many of them are surviving. They have a low survival rate at this point in time. So it's been known for hundreds of years that this would happen, that we'll have to move north to survive. And part of the interpretive wisdom of Anishinaabe elders during this time of the eighth fire is that in order to survive, we'll have to ride the glacier. So if you think of the Great Lakes region and where my family comes from, like Nipissing and on up into Hudson Bay, again, they're saying we'll have to, you know, it may get too hot for us to survive here. We might have to ride out the glacier into the next epoch, even. So we have a choice. And the only way to move forward and survive is to choose love and all that entails, instead of, you know, a lack of love and respect for creation. So we say in Anishinaabe language, Gakina nin dinawe maganuk, sorry, which is the same as Mitakuyasin, and we are all related, all my relations. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to interject, you know, and now is the time. You know, I told people, you know, like wherever I went, you know, I could stand here and I could lie to you about who I am, or I could be honest with you, and people say, well, you know, you don't act like a native, you know, you don't have your drum up here. I could put feathers on. I have all the regalia, you know, I could look that part, you know, but I'm a product of the modern society now. So, and then some of my people say, well, you speak like a white man. Well, what else am I supposed to do? You know, I'm learning to retain my language again, back, for the sake of my spirit and my spirituality. But at the same time, I can't tear myself in half and live half in this world and half in that world. I had to find that balance. And the only way I found that balance was through love and respect for everything that God had created, my fellow man. And I tell people, you know, I use the herbs of the earth. I use what people call marijuana. You know, it's a sacred medicine. You know, I always resort to the Bible because my mother was a Christian, and I read the Bible, and I accept those tenets as something good. You know, if it helps a man, then it's good. You know, and men misuse those things. You know, but the Bible says that everything that God hath created is good. You know, And we understand that as a native people. We have always understood that. Everything we take from the earth, we offer tobacco in thanksgiving. And I used to tell them that at the sacred fire around sacred stone. I said, well, I could resort to 2 Timothy. I quote the Bible and people get it all shocked. It says, everything that God has created is good and to be received with thanksgiving. And when I read that, and I was troubled trying to find a balance of, well, how do we as natives fit in this picture? You know? And when I read that, I learned that same principle sitting in the hills, what they call hamblecha, fasting. Spirit told me that everything in the world is good. The only thing bad in this world is us, because either our hearts are good or they're bad. And I always tell people that, people always trying to find a middle ground. Well, what do you think? Well, I'm an optimist. No, everybody has an excuse, but I always say there's only 2 choices when it comes to spirit. Your spirit's either good or bad. There's no middle ground. And that's the choice people have to make within themselves to find that balance. Balance commands that we love and respect one another and share what we have from our hearts. I used to ask people that, who could watch another man starve? Who could watch another man go hungry or thirsty? Who could stand by? Like what happened with this George Floyd thing? Isn't it interesting that it was that divine feminine that stepped up when she was videotaping that? And then finally, men showed up and backed her up, see? And that's an example of our responsibility to the divine feminine, is to support them, respect them, and help, because through them, I have learned so much from my wife, about those sort of things. I have made my share of mistakes because of my being lost inside. And every day of my life still, I have to check myself, because I find myself sometimes feeling like a hypocrite when I think a certain thought, or I joke about something that's not proper. And then I catch myself and I think, why did I even say that? I don't believe that, And so we take all of these things for granted. So I'm asking that all of the youth now, from this time forward, start looking within themselves, find that balance, and realize that the world is theirs, and the legacy that us elders want to leave for them is truth, honor, love, and balance. That's the best we can do. I stood on those front lines with all the youth day in and day out. And when they asked me, well, Uncle Robert, what should we do? I said, that's up to you, because I trust your judgment. This is your world coming now. And it's time for you to take your place. And if you want change, and it's like what's going on now with the politics in America. People are so worried. But I believe so much in the power of that divine creator, however people choose to call it, Allah, Buddha, God, Jesus, whatever, don't forsake those things. Look to those things, because everybody asks that eternal question eventually. What is my purpose and why am I here? And that question has been sought out time and time again for eons. And we can go on through this life and never know it all. We will learn till the day we die. But it's like what my people used to say. Today is a great day to die. And they romanticize that in cowboy movies and things like that. But I'd like to elaborate on that and share this much and why they said it. It was because they knew in their hearts, if I have done nothing wrong, if I have tried my best to correct the wrong that is in me and live right and do right, what do I have to fear in death? See, because, you know, in like, you know, like in Christianity, you know, or in Catholic school, you know, we're taught that sins, you know, you sin. And there are certain types of sins that you can't, if you don't overcome them, you will roast in hell, you know, and it scare people to death, you know. Oh my God, you know. But then there are those, what of the non-believer? See, there lies the human nature to justify wrong. You know, they justify their lives by, you know, they don't want to believe in anything. And we see that now today so much, you know, and I ask everybody, the youth and everybody, you know, you will find those answers if you will take the time to spend some time in prayer, however you know how, you know. I myself, I say to myself, I don't need a church because I can walk in nature and that's the church. I can pray wherever I choose to, wherever I'm at, wherever spot I find myself. That's a place I can do some good. And on a daily basis, when I don't forget, I pray for all of humanity and the good of all creation, not just human beings, but the plants, the animals, you know. I sit out in nature at times, you know. And the sad part though, again, is I go walking through the woods and I feel so serene and so peaceful at times. But then my heart breaks when I look down and I see trash laying there. You know, a very serene, beautiful spot. And there's the evidence of the disrespect man has for that's what gives us life. You know, I've told people that. Who would destroy that what gives you life? They're destroying the water, a very essential element to human existence. You know, I heard one person tell me, but Uncle Robert, you know, they discovered some kind of organism that doesn't need water. And that may be so. One organism out of thousands who are dependent on water of life. Miniwi Choni. And I saw the total disregard in our politicians. So my other plea is, you know, if you want change, you know, people say F the government, F this, F that. But the power we have now, look at what that prayer did and the youth did through Sacred Stone and that pipeline fight. The message went around the world. And it's, people talk of auras. And people said, why is it getting so big? Why are so many, you know? And then when we heard our message finally hit the news, people cried and said, Uncle Robert, they heard us. You know, I said, it's because of the prayer, regardless of what other people say. It was that prayer. It created this aura. The more you pray, the more that power is increased. And the more people that are added to it that come and are attracted to it like a magnet, the more that power increases. So now, see, it's just like that prophecy of seventh generation. The children stood up to defend justice. And it's that like hearts, like minds that were compelled to come together and say, we're not having this anymore. And by that same principle, see, we can't reinvent the wheel. They're talking about this new election and people are dissatisfied with the choices we have. And I spoke about that at Sacred Stone. I said, well, then it's time to start a third political party. And then the naysayers say, well, no, it won't work. It's been tried. No, you know, people that it's all in how you go about attempting and accomplishing these things. If you attack it and you address it with true love and faith and belief that you can accomplish anything, you know, I said I tried to erase that word "I can't" out of my vocabulary, because I used to tell people around that fire, if you say you can't, then you might as well not attempt it, because you've already contaminated your own ability to achieve it. If you believe in yourself with all your heart, because the heart knows. So like I said, you can look in a mirror and you can lie to the whole world about who you are and what you are, but you can't lie to yourself, because the concept of truth is within that very glance in the mirror. You know the truth about yourself. So with that concept, you know, I hope this message rings loud and clear that we can accomplish this change in America, because we can't reinvent the wheel. It's what we have now. And it's the closest we're coming to utopia, because we're the only country in the world, regardless of the military complex or whatever people are so down against. We can stop that military complex. Because the prime example is this pandemic. You know, it's our tax dollars going into the system, and yet they're taking our tax dollars to give to other countries and buy more war machines, but we can't help our own people during this pandemic. You know, it costs the government $150 million a day to run military bases around the world. I said, you want to cut pork belly spending? We're not the world's policemen, and we should stop trying to be that, you know? So I would like to share that message with everybody. Look within, find that balance. And remember, it comes to the true, honest point that is love. The heart knows love, and like hearts will always find each other. And once we band together in that love, we can accomplish anything in the world. And I would like to end it like that. And if anybody has anything to say, you know, I'll leave it up to you, Robert. You know, thank you for hearing my message and my companion's message, you know, because my message will always be a message of truth and love. I can't lie to myself or my heart. Namaste. Wopila chupikalo, to have me here and be able to share some words.
Thank you both for sharing your wisdom, your stories, and your lineages with us. Now we'll open up to questions. If anyone has anything they'd like to share and bring forward, feel free.
I'm here, Tahira, and I heard what Uncle Robert said about the youth, and I too am a champion of the 60s. And so I'm at first, my sister and I organized the first Black Panther Party up in White Plains, New York. So anyway, I walked the path to this path where we call them for the elders. And when I introduced myself, I don't know that you heard me, Uncle Robert. I walked to this north, and because I wanted to sit and hear the stories in the north and what was coming from the north. And what is that elevated message that comes from there? I live here in St. Croix, so we've been in existence. I'm the founder of the Elder Council of Elders here. And so right now, moving to work with that intermediate, those young people, to get their voices pulled into the community so we can have different kind of conversations. Because I feel like there are not enough. And we know in our time, it was the young people that made it. I mean, it was a young adults at that time that changed the world, more or less. And so then when Mr. J. Edgar Hoover got concerned that we might just win, because I was in the Black Panther Party, because we had created some powerful structure and brought together 3,500 people at UCLA in California. And so when they was coming back, we had put together some structure. It was pretty rainbow, it was all the revolutionary people at that time. Everybody, weathermen, everybody came together. And before we could get back to East Coast, some of our people's comrades was being shot down. And Ms. J. Edgar Hoover was saying we was the greatest threat to the security of the United States of America. So this time, I contrast that, and what I see now is that this powerful is not just one thing. It's like the whole world, the whole globe, everybody has stood up. And so I guess my question is, I heard you say about the youth, but I'm wondering about the problems that I see in the Black communities. I look at the cry for justice, but I also see what needs to be corrected. And so I'm wondering if you would speak to some of that, because I can hear the heart and the anger, but I think that for me as an elder in this side of it, we have to call back to responsibility and honor. The elders have to call it into being. Otherwise it will go on and we will make it right for our youth to act out. So our young people have to be called back and be told that it's not okay for them to disrespect mother, grandmother, their wives, their babies, and their community. So I can honor, I feel that it's two-folded what we're watching in the world. It's almost like the ancestors say, I'm showing you. And I heard you say like the primordial or the phenomenon. The phenomenon rose up in George Floyd's cry. You had to look, I looked at the energy. I looked at the minutes, because astrologically and numerologically, and what I understand about that energy in terms of ancestral energy and how it gets crafted in a way where we can look and we're looking clearly. And when he called for mother, that's primordial energy that went out. It wasn't just, I'm calling for my mother. It's a primordial cry went out. So it's like the gates open up so we could step in. It's a tragic, but on the other side of it, it's a blessing. It's a two-folded process. And we can elevate that energy, elevate it all by entering into our sacred work, our sacred fires, our sacred prayers and offerings. That's what I see. And that's my truth. So I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, sister.
Just to kind of answer what she had to say was, it's like you have to, I found the change amongst our youth, because in some of the reservations, the youth were trying to espouse different cultures or whatever, the thug mentality, gangster mentality. But the bottom line is this, and they disrespected elders and those sort of things. And people become fearful, But again, that's where the spirit comes into play. The elders have to take the time to band together to make this aura power more powerful. And that comes through prayer. You can't accomplish anything without that divine power, however you perceive it to be, whether you call it Gaia or Allah, or however you perceive it. We can't forsake something that is tried and true. It's like us natives, we pray in a circle, and we say once that prayer is started, the circle is infinite. It never ends. It hasn't stopped since the very first time our elders start praying in those circles. And each time a generation starts praying again, it increases the power of that aura. And that's what sometimes it takes. But people, they get so fearful and they're scared to take that stand. So they isolate themselves in a bubble. And then what she was talking about, I understand the 60s because I remember the COINTELPRO programs, the agent provocateurs through the FBI and the CIA and all of them, you know. And we know that they have their provocateurs to push their political agendas. And they will always be there, just like the ones they sent in on this Black Lives Matter marches. It wasn't until the real ones who had that dream in their heart for justice and equality started crowding around the rabble rousers and telling them, take that somewhere else. We don't want that here. You know? And so that's what it takes. You know, you have to step up. You can't accomplish anything if you just sit back and expect it to come to you. Sometimes you have to make it happen. And that's what we do as Native people. We immerse ourselves in prayer.
Thank you.
No, not for show.
Yeah, I
With our
got you.
heart.
With our heart, yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
If I could speak to that a little bit, when George Floyd called for his mama, I think every mother in the world heard that call. I think maybe that's what you were part of what you were trying to say, and yeah, it's it requires a response, and so as elders in this time, you know, we have to let the youth lead, but continue to give them guidance, be touchstones for them, so that they have someone to come to when they're not sure where to turn, and help them listen to their own better natures when they're taking action. But you know, like what Robert was saying, bringing up agents provocateurs, not everyone is aware of this if they're following like mainstream news or something, but we know that it wasn't initially any Black Lives Matter protesters who started any of the violence or looting or all these things that are being held up as complaints. I mean, it's documented and on record that those things were started by, first of all, an off-duty police officer in Minneapolis, and in other towns and cities across the country. And the violence has been brought in by white supremacists. And, you know, for the most part, the protests have been peaceful and beautifully so. And, you know, the youth created that. They have some wonderful, I don't want to say leaders, because again, it's still a leaderless movement. You know, we see what happens when we put forth leaders and they become targets, and we don't want to see that happen again. And so much of the leadership is happening by consensus, which is what started in the 60s. I was in preschool, but I think I picked some of that up maybe osmotically from my teachers or something. But you know, it's been a guiding path for my own journey, and I think that's what we need to do, is stay true to the path, and the path of nonviolent direct action is the only way to move forward on those things, because without some of these ills being solved in society, particularly racism, because it's the heart of inequity. I shouldn't say heart, maybe, because it's the heartless inequity, but these things need to be addressed in order for us all to come together as one, because we are one humanity.
If you don't mind, I would like to interject one thing. It's kind of like what we used to do, and I've been speaking out about this all along. She asked how do we get through to some of the youth? Well, we use psychology. If somebody was messing up, beating his wife, then all the uncles got together and took that young man off to the side and said, hey, you're shaming the family. We don't do these things. They spoke logically to the youth until he realized that he had upset the balance of things. And sometimes it's that psychology of coming together and having the initiative and the faith to come together, and that's how unity comes into play. It's always a matter of unity. The only way to accomplish anything good is through unity.
Mm,
It's like they say, together we stand, divided we fall.
yeah. Powerful. Does anyone else have a question to bring forward to the group? If not, I do have a question. Uncle Robert, Michaela, curious what the best way for members of my generation, the millennials who are coming of age during this crisis, how can we best support our indigenous peoples, our indigenous elders and leaders in this movement, in the fulfillment of the prophecies?
I would say, in that respect, if you have opportunities, like I tell people that it, like amongst our own tribe, and what we've come to do, and you're hearing in this pandemic that all these people are dying in these old folks' homes alone. See, that's what we've done, and the natives speak about that. We live in boxes, and we isolate ourselves in boxes. So now we put our elders away in boxes, and we don't even go near them. And I said, and amongst my people, they said, well, the stories are all going. We don't know who knows what. I said, well, you have all these elders sitting when they retire at home alone. Why don't you take them to the Head Starts? Start a program to get cars or trucks or vans to go pick them up and take them to the schools and say, have story hour for the youth to teach the little ones stories so that it doesn't leave. Because I have seen that amongst the youth in native culture. Sometimes, and these youth are coming up and they're telling me the stories that I heard when I was a child, and I think, well, where'd you hear that at? Now, my grandma or my mom told me, so we're letting a valuable resource go to waste. And it's like another young man, who was lost, he came up to me and said, well, we don't have our ways and all that. I said, well, this was when I was in prison, and he said, well, I learned about this pipe in here, but I'm not a Sioux, and I don't know my ways. And I said, well, when you get out of here, I said, go home. What we do amongst us is we take gifts like tobacco or food or something to an elder, and we sit down and we say, uncle, or grandpa, or however you perceive that person, and say, I want to know something. Could you tell me? I said, go to them, talk with them, sit with them, help them. Haul water, haul wood. In those days we had to chop wood and haul water to our homes. I said, go do some good for some elders, and then question them, because you're allowing a lot of wisdom to just go away. If you want to know something, invite some. Go speak with them sometimes. You'll be surprised that they'll make you laugh sometimes too. You'll walk away with a good feeling in your heart, because they could tell you some good things, some things that are invaluable to your life. It's not just a matter of all elders, Doesn't matter, white, black, red, yellow, go to those elements, when we can. We can't now, again, because of the social distancing and all that. But that's one way. Get them involved. You have a picnic. Go get some elders. Your grandpa's sitting at home alone. Go ask him, hey, Grandpa, we're having a picnic. We're having a gathering. You want to come over and sit down and have something to eat? Stuff like that. Just something that simple. And maybe they'll share something with you that you never knew, and then you're enriching their lives and sharing the love. And they don't feel like they're going to waste. It's all in, who you are and where you come from. It's like now, I because I have that diversity in me, I learned to Hebrew prayers. I read the Torah. I had a talith and did Shabbat ceremonies. And I I've gone to banquets with Nation of Islam. I've gone to places like that, where they've had gatherings and got to sample those types of foods, traditional foods that they hold so dear. And it's all caring and sharing. That's what it's about. Having the compassion in your heart to love others, not just our own age group, but all, young and old. Oh no.
Oh no.
Thank
I
you.
think that the point that Uncle Robert made about the rainbow children, because I live here in St. Croix, and that you have balance. We pretty predominantly everything is governed by the peoples of the island, the Crucians here, the people who live here. But we still have our problems. But you see a lot of interracial children. And so now they're questioning some of the millennials and they asked them the question, like, since this has been coming up, they came to me and they said, well, how do we answer our question? Because right now I'm feeling like left out. So what happened, they began to come together, and now they're having a conversation. It's really interesting what's happening, because we're a smaller island, we're a smaller population, so we can see things as, the communities are small, so we can see the evolving more clearly here. We suffer other kinds of problems on the island, economic problems, but I think we have a good chance to begin to weave together those rainbow collections and also in reading different prophecies, I understand about different races, human species as races, and supposedly we are in the 6th and 7th race. And so that's a whole nother conversation, because that comes from the indigenous on the other side, the sacred geometry and the prophecies of the early ancient African people. That is in their prophecy, that this coming of weaving back into place these sacred principles. And so I'm looking from that way of the prophecies in terms of the 7th generation, and especially looking at the fact that it's almost like our earth did turn itself up. So now we're stepping into a new paradigm. So that's the way I'm looking at it. And there are many, many opportunities and with coming out of that in terms of looking in. The energy here is really good in terms of how to come together and work together.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that forward. It looks like we have lost Uncle Robert and Michaela. So I'm gonna just message them the link once again to help them get back here. And we're going to spend about 15 minutes more in this room, then we're all going to head back to the main room for some closing prayers. And curious how this is landing. What does everyone feel with this? These messages that are coming through at this time. I know for one, as a millennial, I'm feeling the call. I hear the prophecies, as you were mentioning, that this is the time. This is time for us to rise, time for us to come together. The rainbow people, all of the four corners of the world, the races, the colors, the creeds, all coming together in one tribe. And I'm excited to see what happens with that. Yeah.
I said it's not going to be easy. I mean, we have to do a lot of inner work.
Yeah.
And those dialogues those make sure that we're in conversation and dialogues and sharing our stories. You know, I found that when we have dialogues and I know who you are, first thing I want to know who you are. We build a relationship and then we can be being. And those are simple things. We think we have to have a lot to do that. I have big intellectual, philosophical. No. Who are you? I want to know where you come from. You know, tell me about you. You know?
Yeah.
So easy.
Yeah, just people, you know.
Yeah, just people. So I think this is going to force us to be in a greater relationship. You know, the hurricanes do that to us here on St. Croix. It's like we found ourselves out of balance and not in a good relationship. So the last two hurricanes really, really pushed us back in to check us as, are we in relationship? We definitely have to depend on each other. So thank you. What's your name?
My name is Robert. Robert.
You're Robert too. Thank you so much, Robert. I appreciate having you listening. Thank you.
Yes, it's an honor to serve. I feel that this is part of the calling, is to be here and hold the space open for the wisdom of elders like yourself and Uncle Robert and all the wisdom keepers that we have here in the council this evening. And I feel very humbled to be able to do that, knowing that it's going to reach a lot of people. You know, we're broadcast live on Facebook right now. This will be on YouTube after the broadcast, and it'll be something that people can watch and learn from. I've sent a message to Uncle Robert here. I don't see a response yet. It seems that they're still having some technical issues. And
how do we get back over there? Just leave and go?
Yep, there's a link. I'll place that here. If you follow that, that'll bring you back to the main room. And Violet, girl, what do y'all think? Should we head back? Try to get in touch with Uncle Robert again.
Since the main room is the room that we're going to be doing closing ceremony in, we could go and transfer over to that room now and bring Uncle Robert into that room and all just close together, because otherwise we're going to be closing very shortly anyway. Cool.
Yep. All right. Let's make that happen. Thank you all. It's been an honor to facilitate this ceremony and to hold this council container open for wisdom to be transmitted down for us to all share together. Aho matakwe asin.
Aho. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for facilitating, Rob. Thank you, Aya. Appreciate all of your feedback and wisdom.
Thank you, Violet and
Thank
Pyrrha,
you.
helping to hold this container, for being a part of the ceremony. Hey, Sam, how's it going, brother?
Love you guys so much.
Oh, we love you too.
We'll see you in the other room.
Yeah.
Do you guys need the link? Here,
I'll
put it right here.
Yeah.
Oh, you already put it there?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right. See you soon. Thank you, Aya.